Welcome back. Now we will talk about the next important Kubernetes object, and it's called service. So with deployments, we define the actual deployment that we want to be carried out on our Kubernetes cluster. Like we want to modify the state of the Kubernetes cluster. That's what we do with the deployment. But every deployment affects one or more pods in our Kubernetes cluster, and these pods are running on the worker nodes. So there has to be some way that we should be able to access these pods or the application running inside these pods, which we just deployed with the help of deployment object. So service is that object which helps us actually deploy this. So we define a service, and then this service is going to make sure that the deployment that just went, we want to expose that deployment so that it can be accessed from outside. So in simple terms, a deployment object is an abstract way of exposing an application running on a set of pods. Because if we deploy certain things on a pod and we are not able to access it, it's of no use. Hence, this by creating this service object, we say that we want to expose a particular deployment so that it should be accessed outside. So let's look at how we can do this with the help of a YAML file. Again, we define the API version, which is v1, and here this time the kind will be not deployment like it was here, rather it should be service. And again, this should be the name of the service. So like here we give a name to the deployment because every deployment should have a unique name. Similarly, every service should have a unique name, and then a service is linked to a deployment. So we have to, that's why, keep the names as unique. Next is we specify something like selector. And what does this do is it is going to find out on which deployment this service is going to act. So this selector app, this attribute selector app, this is the my app. This is something should match with the deployments, this label. If it doesn't match, then the service is going to not work. Hence, it's very important that this value that we see here in the metadata labels app, this value should match with the spec selector app of the service. And after that, we have ports where we say that what is the protocol that we will be using via this service to access a particular pod, and on what port we want to access it in the outside world, and what is the port on which the container is running. So this port that you see should be same as this particular port. Of course, in this example, it's not same, but this is the container port. So this port should be exactly same as this port. So once these port are same, so the service is now able to tunnel this or proxy this port to our deployment pod, this one, and then the service is going to expose the outside world this particular application on this particular port. And of course, there are different types of service, but most popular one is like node port and load balancer. So node port service, as we know, it's going to have a static IP on the node level, and then a dynamic port will be used to access that. But if you are deploying your Kubernetes cluster on the cloud environment, then if we go for the service type as load balancer, then a DNS name will be assigned to the cloud provider load balancer. So this is the way how we define a service. And again, the way to run this service is exactly same as the way we run the deployment file. It's the same command, kubectl apply -f, and then the file name or the path of the service file. It's exactly the same command. And of course, after that, you can do kubectl get deployment. Similarly, you can do kubectl get service. and you can see the different details of that particular service. So this was how we can define a service object using YAML file and how we can deploy it into our Kubernetes cluster with the kubectl apply -f command. Thank you.